but we got to figure out our superposition. And so if you look at that chart in my slides, it's right here. You can go outside the footprint, right? So again, when x equals 0, we're right at the center of the circular load. X is the distance from center line of the load. And when we reach the very edge of the circle, that's one diameter, one radius. If x equals a radius, that's half of the diameter. So that's where we get this x over b equals 1/2. That's the edge of the circle, but there's still an influence outside of the footprint of the circle. So we're talking about a point that's between the two circles. It's outside of the footprint of both circles, but the circles still have an influence. So we got to figure out our superposition. But again, they made it easier on you because it's symmetric. They're both the same. So in plan view, and this is 918. In plan view, we see one circle looks like this, and the other circle looks like this. Both of them are identical circles of b equals 120 feet. And the point is exactly halfway in between them. A radius of 60 plus another 35. In other words, x equals 95 feet. Well, so is the other one. A radius of 60 plus another 35. So that x is also 95 feet. So they both have the same b, they both have the same x, they both have the same z. Well, you can just do one of them and multiply it by 2.
Yeah. All right, yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
In this case, because they're identical, you can just do one of them and multiply it by 2. But for each one, for each circle, you know b, you know x, you know z. So you should be able to use the chart and read off, right? So b equals 120 feet, x equals 95 feet, z equals, well, they're telling you 120 feet down below where the loads are applied, right? So in other words, x over b equals, well, 95 over 120, whatever that is, that's 3, that's just over, that's like, what, 0.78 roughly, okay? And z over b equals 1, right? Then you can go in the chart and you can get your influence factor.
So looking at the chart for the circle one,
Yeah.
If x over b happens to be 1.0 and going down to whatever depth, it doesn't touch any of the influence.
So that means,
what does that mean? It's out of the zone?
it's out of the influence zone. There is no influence. You'd have an influence factor of 0.
All right. Okay.
Let's look at that. Yeah, if that means you're outside of that 45-degree angle.
Okay.
I mean, again, it's not exactly 45 and certainly not for a circle, but yeah, on the chart for the circle, even when you get out to like 0.5, 6, 7, 8, when you get to about 0.8 or so, your influence factor is not necessarily 0, but it's really low.
Yeah.
And so, like, if this is 0.1, where's 0.05? I don't know. Is that a circle that looks like this? Well, look at from 0.2 to 0.1. There's a big gap. I think 0.05 is out pretty wide. So anyways, yeah, if you get outside the range of this chart, you'd have to assume that I is really small and maybe almost equal to 0.
All right.
But what do we have? 95 divided by 120 equals 0.792, right? So if I come out to X over B is 0.792. Wow, that's actually pretty close. Right? Almost 0.8. Come down here carefully. And Z over B equals 1. Z over B equals 1. That's right there. So I come down and it's actually really close. Really close to I equals 0.1. Maybe it's
Yeah, I ended up getting 330 for one of them, you know, and then when I multiplied it, it ended up being 660 rather than the 600 I think the assignment says.
well, what is, well, the bearing pressure, right? So if
I got 0.79, so when I came down there I got 0.105. I
okay,
think I used, you know,
yeah, so
0.105. It ended up being like
yeah,
315 instead of 300, I believe.
yeah,
And then
right,
when I
right, right.
multiplied,
So yeah, that's understandable. The author here who provided the answers for this one, your textbook author estimated that I equals 0.1. So you might say, I don't know, 0.1, I don't know, right? Here's 0.2, so right about here is 0.15. So this is 0.14, 0.1, you know, I would say 0.10 or 0.11 at the most. So if you said 0.11, then yes, you would get 330 for each of them, which would be 660 combined total, right? And that would be fair. That would be okay.